brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Mike from 1AAuto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And next time you need parts for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to install fender flares on this Dodge Ram. This one's a 2008, and this particular type of pocket style fender will install the same on 2002 to 2008 Dodge Ram 1500s and 2003 to 2009 25 and 3500s. You'll need a new fender flare kit from 1AAuto.com, flat blade screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver, utility knife, 5/16 socket with a ratchet, and depending on your installs, you may need an 8mm socket, heat gun, double-sided tape, adhesive remover, sandpaper, and rust preventative paint.
Inside the wheel well at the bottom of the fender, we have some Phillips heads and some 8mm screws. Our truck has some hardware missing, so your truck may have more hardware or hardware of a different style. Regardless, the process of installation will be the same. Before installing your fender flare onto your truck, you want to take the supplied seal here, remove the 3M tape from the roll. You're going to want to do that as you go, little by little. Lay the edge onto your flare, flush with the bottom here. Just walk that seal on there. Just work that right along the flare, remembering to press your adhesive on the outside edge here. When you finish working the seal to the other end of the flare, cut it flat and start the next flare. Supplied in our kit is a bag of faux hardware and a T40 Torx driver. What you'll need to do to make these look right is take the T40 Torx screw, install it into each hole on the flare, flip it over, use a washer and your nylock nut with a 5/16 socket, your T40 Torx driver supplied to the kit, as well as a 1/2-inch wrench. Tighten them together. Repeat this step through each hole throughout all 4 fender flares. Start by test fitting your flare on the vehicle. Some of these larger flares may require you to relocate or remove this badge on the fender. There's a few different ways to remove these badges, but the safest and probably the easiest way is to use a heat gun, or if you don't have one, a high temperature hair dryer to heat up the adhesive on the back of the badge. Use a rubber scraping or prying tool, or if you don't have one, you can wrap a few thick wraps of electrical tape around a flat blade screwdriver to reach back there and pry it off without damaging your paint. Make sure to get it nice and hot without getting it so hot that it may bend or warp the plastic. When the badge moves easily, it should be warm enough that you can carefully remove the badge from the fender. There's a few different ways to remove this adhesive, from using a rubber razor blade to a plastic putty knife or anything that'll scrape and not damage the paint. One of the simpler methods is simply rolling the thicker adhesive up with your thumb or your fingernail, peeling the bulk off, and then wiping it with an adhesive remover. Our badge came off pretty clean, but if you still have remnants of the lettering from paint that hasn't seen sun in the life of the vehicle, adding a thin layer of wax to the area the badge was removed from can help fill in fine scratches and blend out the area so it looks smooth. Remove the adhesive from the back of the badge the same way. Line up your fender where it's going to go on the truck and use a piece of painter's tape to mark the top edge of the fender so we know the height we can reinstall our badge. We're going to use some double-sided body molding tape on the back of our old badge. Make sure you press it on nice and firm so the tape actually sets Using a sharp razor blade, cut the end flush with the emblem. Lay enough down on the other end to cover the badge completely. Same thing, trim off the excess tape here. If you really want to, you can cut out all the stuff inside of the badge here, but even from the factory, they just go right across it with a black tape, regardless of the color of the vehicle. Now that we're all coated, we can peel the backing off and adhere it to our vehicle. Remove the backing from the molding tape. Make sure that the surface you're going to be mounting it to is clean. So we know that the bottom of our tape line here is above the fender. You can see that the top of our tape line is at the bottom of this body line. So we'll just go ahead and use the body line as a reference. You can use the residue from the old badge to see about how far off it was off of the door. Re-adhere the badge to the fender. And now we can install our flares without covering the emblem. Line up your fender flare and check the alignment of the bolt holes. In our case, the bottom 11 o'clock position and the frontmost bolt line up. So we'll use an 8mm socket and ratchet to remove the top two bolts and a Phillips for the bottom. Working on the passenger side, cutting the wheel to the right gives us access to this bottom bolt. To the left would give you the same access on the driver's side. Install the flare onto the truck and start your screws by hand. Don't tighten your hardware down all the way until you've checked the alignment and made sure that everything is where you want it to be. After checking the alignment of the fender flare, if everything's to your liking, go ahead and finish tightening down all of your hardware. Our truck, like many trucks of all makes and models, has rust over the rear tires, on the wheel arch, on the side of the bed. It's very common for these to rust out and people to buy fender flares to try to cover over them and hide that rust spot. But what a lot of people don't do is take the time to remove the scaling and bubbling paint and coat the rust so the fender flare not only hides it but keeps it from getting worse. We'll show you how to do that. Start by taking a fresh, sharp razor blade, cutting around the edges where our bubbling is to score it. We'll take a flat blade screwdriver, scrape away all the bubbled paint up to our score marks. All that score mark does is keeps that chipping controlled so it doesn't break off into our good paint where there's no need to scale it off. This guy's a little harder to see, but we do have a rust bubble starting right here. So before that gets worse and expands or goes through, I'm going to score those edges with a razor blade as well. While there was no rust under this bubble, that deformation in the paint would allow water to set in and eventually make our truck look like this. So we'll finish scraping off all our scaling. Then we recommend you sand it and treat it with the rust preventative coating or paint of your choosing. Be sure to install your rubber seal onto the fender flare for the rear. Line it up. The rear 2 bolts line up on the rear flare, and the 2 open holes in the front. Included in your fender flare kit is this hardware set, which includes plastic retaining screws, clips, and self-drilling screws, which you can use to tighten up the top and front of the rear fenders as you see fit. Place your rear fender flare onto the side of the truck. Line up the bottom bolt hole. Start your screws. Remember not to tighten anything down until you've lined it all up where you want it to be. We'll use 2 of the plastic retainer screws supplied with our kit in the bottom. Check that everything's aligned the way you like. Finish tightening down your hardware. After you've completed one side of the truck, repeat these steps for the front and rear on the opposite side. If you take your time to line everything up, these fender flares look great, just like they were installed from the factory.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope this video helped you out. Next time you need parts for your car, please visit 1aauto.com. Also check out our other helpful how-to as well as diagnosis videos.